Hey, what's going on, Clipper people? It is me, William the Opinion Updike. And today we're going to talk about the Clips' overtime loss to the Cavaliers. They were in this one, but just not quite enough to get over the hump on the second night of a back-to-back. We're also going to be talking your Twitter Tuesday questions. We do that every single Tuesday at Locked On Clips. And also in some shavings news, we're going to talk about Zoo and Reggie and their pick and roll status. So all that and more coming up right about now.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, so the Clippers did lose 120-111 to the Cavs. We got to give you a shout out to Bet Online. Here at Locked On Clips, we come at you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We are brought to you by Bet Online. They have you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, right off the bat for the Clippers, there was no Reggie Jackson or Marcus Morris in this one, which I personally was like, oh, this might not be the best game, but it turned out pretty well for the Clips. I mean, as well as a loss could go, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the encouraging loss realm. And honestly, it's good to get it's good to get other guys opportunities like this. We've talked so much about the development this year and the development of that core. But a lot of that still does come down on kind of a lot of the same guys and a lot of the guys who already have a fair amount of NBA experience. But games like this, like you get to see, what raw or younger or however you want to define these prospects, how they look, with the ball in their hands, trying to take control of games against teams that are, not at full strength, but, still have some top tier talent available in there. Speaking of top tier talent, can we talk about Evan Mobley for? Can we talk about Evan Mobley for just 1 second? I know we're gonna get into what we liked from the Clips, but like the guy already has 100 career blocks. Like it's insane how good he is.
He had a really big one on Zoo in overtime, which was a little demoralizing, but we did bounce back. Him and Garland. I'm so happy the Cavs are in our conference. Speaking of Zoo, what we liked, he just kind of continues to be leaned on and answer the call whenever that's happening. In the last 2 games, he's played 66 total minutes. And this one versus the Cavs, before fouling out in overtime, he had 24, 14, and 4 assists. He had 2 blocks. He was +1. He had a couple of, he had 3 turnovers at the end of the day, which isn't that big a deal. But, Zoo has been... I know there's a bunch of people, Carl Tart included, who hate Ivica Zubac and don't think he should be on the team anymore. But I'm not sure where you're finding the value for $7.5 million a year that we're getting for Ivica Zubac. He was phenomenal in this game. He was great against the Pistons. It's just shame we couldn't pull this one out because this was a good Zoo game.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also just kind of like such a great fit for this roster when you look at, what they want to do in terms of having some variance and different sort of looks that they can throw out in closing time lineups. You have Zoo, who is, solid defensively, great classic center, or all these other options. So, yeah.
And he doesn't care about the other options, which is great too. He's like, play somebody else.
He just wants to win.
Yeah, he just wants to win. We saw some heart in Zoo minutes today, which was kind of weird. Let's talk about Amir Coffey. A lot of people stepped up, but let's talk Amir Coffey.
Yeah. So he came up big in this game. He finished with 19, 3 and 2, and a block. Something that's kind of surprising. He took 11 threes in this game, which is something that we kind of monitored and reported on when he was in those G League assignments because we really saw a drastic increase in the shooting. And, Ty Lue wants Coffey to trust in his shooting. He wants him to be confident with the ball in his hands. And he did just that. And he shot 36%, not an elite percentage by any means, but also nothing to sneeze at. It's just great to see the evolution of his game at this level. And it kind of begs the question for me, where does Amir Coffey sit in the pecking order when this team is fully healthy? And is there an argument for him to run the point on the second unit?
Damn, there actually might be. We got a question about that on Twitter Tuesday. I'm not mad at that idea at all. Because we don't really know what the Clips are going to do with that second point guard scenario. Man, I hope we get him that contract soon. He also, we'll talk about this and what we didn't like. There was a missed call on Amir that would have fully changed this game.
He also did miss a free. He did also miss what would have been probably the go ahead free throw.
Sure.
To win the game, but hey, it happens. And like we said,
fatigue.
Also, this is development, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
development for a player like this. Yeah, you're not going to win all those games. It's why teams with a lot of young players aren't very good.
Yeah, lose a bunch of games.
But another guy who's in that pecking order on the second unit is Terrence Mann, who wasn't efficient in this game, but he really brought it, especially in the fourth quarter. He finished with 18, 10, and 4. I'm not going to bring up the shooting splits because they're bad, but in that fourth quarter, he did hit 2 threes to tie this game on 2 different instances.
Unbelievable.
Which was just great. And also, like, I just want to highlight this 10 boards for a second because I feel like I maybe glossed over that a little bit. For me, anytime Terrence is in that like 7, 8 plus board range, I can't really have a whole lot of complaints about his game unless he's being like bad with the ball. He had 0 turnovers in this one. Like other than the shooting splits, which he did play minutes, they kept his minutes lower last night. They did. It was like 20,
45 today, I think, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so they were kind of saving him for this one. But he had a great game. So I think there's something. Do you have some apologizing to do on this one?
I don't, but I will acknowledge that Semi Ojeleye was pretty solid today. So was Brandon Boston Jr. One note about Terrence, too, that I think is crazy. He had 10 points in the third, which is when the Clippers were like absolutely hit a wall. So the points he did score were very clutch. And like before he had any points, he was just flying around on both ends, which was really cool to see. But Semi Ojeleye had 9 points, 3 boards, was drawing a double team at one point and hit an and one. Like it was funny to watch. Like we needed those minutes. And then Brandon Boston Jr. had 11 points, all of which came in the second quarter. We really needed him. This was a team effort from pretty much everyone other than Rodney Hood, who was bad and should be off the team. I said it. But no, hats off to those guys. Let's get into what we didn't like. And I alluded to this a second ago, but the refs missed a foul call on Amir Coffey with less than 10 seconds left to play in a tie game that would have given the Clippers free throws. It's just kind of annoying, right? Like the last 2-minute report is going to confirm this foul, I'm pretty sure, but we just got to move on. It's a non-conference game. It's just like, whatever. I think he got hooked. I think it was a foul.
It's nothing to dwell on, but it is. I just feel like it was a pretty clear.
It was a big call to miss.
Yeah, I just feel like it was a pretty cut and dry kind of a foul. And maybe this is like karma because the Clips have had a couple of calls go their way in some of these close game situations.
Yeah, it's fair.
So you're not. It's not always going to bounce your way. But I agree. It was frustrating. Not much you can do with it except for move on to the next one. Speaking of moving on to the next one, Luke Kennard in this one, I'm hoping can continue the bounce back because we have seen him the past 2 games leading into this one sort of in a return to form. But he got 14 points in this one, like the Reggie Jackson way, like the hardest
new saying,
possible, like the hardest possible way you could get 14 points. It was on 12 shots. He went 1 of 5 from 3. I'm not bagging on the guy, although I'm sure it sounds like it, but just, we really could have used his shooting. It would have been a nice way to like fully sort of get over the hump on this second night of a back-to-back. But hey, I mean, it wasn't there. It was what it was. We got him shots. I think we got to credit him down.
Bickerstaff a bit too, because Kennard had 6 shot attempts in the first quarter, and he finished the game with 12 total. So they really keyed in on him late, which is weird. I feel like the Cavs and Clippers have this weird, like kind of friendly, not rivalry. Like it's always kind of good games when we play the Cavs. And then we talked about
Darius, only comes 2 times a year. Like,
yeah. We talked about Darius Garland and Mobley. Mobley had 30 and 6. Garland hit a couple clutch shots. He hit that one right after Terrence tied the game. He finished with 24 and 13 assists, which is crazy. We let Lauri Markkanen kind of get off a couple shots too, which was annoying. But I think the biggest thing for me, like the most tangible takeaway I can take from this game, which was such an incredibly hard-fought effort. I think as soon as we saw Reggie and Morris being out, it was a little dicey what we were going to get tonight. But the Clippers did manage to have a 5-minute scoring drought while being in the bonus, which is very difficult to do. It happened in the third. It was great to see the team bounce back in the fourth because I thought we had hit the wall and it was just like, oh God, like this fourth is going to be brutal. We couldn't score for 5 minutes. What's going to happen? We ended up being able to take it to overtime. The defense clamped down, but it's just tough to see the droughts. But I guess I'm happy there was only one, right?
Definitely. That's especially down like 2 key contributors. That's
Our 2
something.
main scorers, yeah.
That's something you can hang your hat on. So, does this game in any way change how you feel about the brutal stretch of play the Clippers have upcoming? Do you think the 8th seed is in jeopardy? Do you think they're safe? Does this
I think
this
we're
do anything
locked
for
in.
you? All right.
I think we're locked into 8. I can't believe the Clippers only have 1 day of rest and have to play on fucking Wednesday again. It's like just absolutely insane. I think we're locked into 8. This is a game stressful, but just fatigue got us. The refs. It's just one of those things. Coming up, we're going to be answering your fantastic Twitter Tuesday questions. But first, we got to give a shout out to Bet Online. We talked about them up top. They got everything you want to bet on. From where the next coach is going to end up. NFL free agency is happening. You can put some money down on where some guys are going to go there. And it's not just football. Thankfully, betonline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your number one wagering destination. I recently got a friend on BetOnline. He won like $800. Shout out Colin McGurk. BetOnline, again, it's where the game starts. Go check it out. betonline.net, where the game starts.
All right. So we're talking Twitter Tuesday. Look, every single Monday, we like to take your questions on Twitter. That's at Locked On Clips. So Chuck, what did people want to know this week?
Let's get into it. Kristen F34 tweeted at us, why doesn't Ty get serious consideration for Coach of the Year, and how can my campaign take off? Hey, you're preaching to the choir, because he should be getting Coach of the Year. Please get that campaign going. We'll sign whatever petition. But, it's just because the team is an 8th seed. Which sucks.
It's an 8th seed, and if you don't follow this team, it's probably like it's not as exciting what he's done as, say, Memphis or even, the Suns being able to continue the success that they had last year.
For sure.
In the regular season. So there's just some kind of strong competition. I think like people who are really into the NBA, you even see it on, like Inside the NBA on TNT, and those guys hate the NBA. They'll even give a shout out to to Ty Lue that, he should be in the conversation, because just the hand he's been dealt all season and the way he's been able to get production out of guys. And I just think overall, I mean, if these last 2 years haven't firmly changed the conversation around Ty Lue and his championship and his legacy, I just think you're not paying any attention. You're not paying enough attention.
You're willfully ignorant at this point. If you think Ty Lue is not an elite coach.
Absolutely.
Ryan Parrott asked, or Ryan Perot, not sure how it's spelled. This guy writes for the Power Rangers comic books, which is sick as hell.
Oh, wow. That's so
legit.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. He said, with our big 2 out, we've seen several role players transition into focal points and major contributors. But when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George return, which of these role players' stocks will rise and which will fall when we are finally at full strength again? So this is kind of what we were talking about in that first segment. It is weird, right? Because it's you add Norm Powell to this list. That's 3 spots that guys are moving down.
Yeah. If Norm is even in the starting lineup.
Very good point. I think right off the bat, Brandon Boston Jr. His stock's going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
I think. And then maybe Amir, depending what the contract's like, but I don't know who's really going to, when I think stock, I guess I think of playing time. And it's just going to be kind of those other wings and stuff like that. I don't know. What do you think?
It's just so situational, right?
Especially with Ty.
As to what you need in game. Because I think if you need the hustle and a sound defense, and you can live with, maybe a player on the floor who in close games, you probably don't want to lean on that heavy offensively. You have Amir Coffey. If you want somebody who can score without really needing the ball in their hands much, you have Luke Kennard. And Terrence Mann, can just sort of be chaos on both ends. Also has like the thing you forget about Terrence too is that he has experience playing with Paul George and this starting lineup in very high leverage situations.
Super good call.
So even last segment when I was talking about Amir Coffee stock rising, which it certainly is, there is still something to be said about continuity for a team that hasn't had a lot of it. So I think like of these kind of like rotational players, I think that Terrence will probably have the most leeway in terms of or market elasticity, and as we call it in stocks, as to his.
You're part of big stocks. I had no
idea how his playing time will be affected, because I think that he's the history is there. He's kind of made the case. But I don't know. Like I think that we will see, within the season, things like come and go. But I think like the Clippers are really keen on players that are kind of a specific niche. So I think like within
big
that,
wings.
you have kind of some options that you can use to make in-game adjustments.
Yeah, for sure. Danny H kind of piggybacks on this. He says, when our stars come back, do we risk the on-court chemistry being negatively affected? We're all thrilled about the fight and resilience and clutches of this team, but that may not be the case with different headliners. Man, I got to be honest. Maybe I'm being naive. I am not worried about this in the slightest.
Well, it's an interesting question. And I guess the thing that I kind of like is in the back of my mind sometimes when these teams with, just role players and no stars kind of overachieve. I think about that Boston year where down Kyrie, those young guys and role players, including Marcus Morris, took the Celtics like to an Eastern Conference final and took the Cavs to 7 games. And then you bring the stars back in, and all of a sudden, like these guys who felt that they had done a lot and saw their role kind of relegated to a smaller thing, it really affected the on-court chemistry. I think what's different about this team is that for all intents and purposes, like next season when we have everybody back, it will be like their 3rd season together. And with the and they came into this knowing, hey, we're going to be complementary pieces.
Exactly.
And then I think what I hope
no one on the team has like shown that they're maybe as good even as Paul George and Kawhi, which I think the issue with that Celtics team was, where some guys showed like, hey, maybe I'm just as good as these other guys who aren't here. That hasn't happened with this Clippers team. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I mean, that would be great if Amir Coffey was all of a sudden maybe as good as like Paul George or something like that. But there's still a very clear pecking order.
Definitely.
We've seen the usage, even with like Reggie and Morris. It's like we've seen the usage. They know what's up. They know they need these guys. And we have an older team compared to that Celtics team too. These guys are like,
that's much different. Yeah, for sure. Basically my hope is that I think that all these guys are kind of echoing Reggie's sentiments when he said that when Kawhi and Paul George come back, like the only thanks that he wants is like they owe him some hardware. And I kind of think that
exactly
is like the mentality of all of these guys right now. I'm hoping that the chemistry can stay good. The vibe's immaculate.
They have been. Andrew Wallenstein, we got some heavy hitters on this Twitter Tuesday, says, can you spell out what the different play-in scenarios are, which teams we'd be facing as the likely 8 seed? So we're pretty much locked into 8, but the Wolves are a game and a half out of 6th right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a non-zero chance we see the Nuggets in the play-in.
That would be pretty wild. It'd
be terrifying. I don't really want it. If we lose the first play-in game, we would see either probably New Orleans or the Lakers. And I think we all know who we'd rather face in that scenario, given how this goddamn season is gone. But I think that's pretty much it. Do you think we'll see the Nuggets, or do you think we're going to play against the Wolves?
I think it'll be the Wolves, but I mean, they are trending upwards. Is there a scenario where you could see the Clippers falling to 9, given how hard their upcoming schedule is? We have the second hardest strength of schedule in the league behind the Lakers. So the only thing that does help us out in that scenario is that the Lakers do have an even harder schedule. But things also look different at the end of the season, right? Like sometimes these teams that are on paper the hardest teams to play are resting guys. Their seed is secured.
Yeah.
It's not the same team necessarily that you think you'd be seeing.
I think we'll hold down the 8 seed. If we fall to 9, something's gone horribly wrong.
I agree.
AR Greenscale asks if they decide to cut Coffee pre-playoffs. Excuse me, if they decide to sign Coffee pre-playoffs, who gets cut, Ojale or Hood? I do not care. I do not give a shit. Either one. I don't know. What do you think?
I guess Hood, but I don't really
Ojale seems better. He's gotten more time, I guess.
I don't really see either one on this.
They're both worse than Kawhi, or they're both worse than Amir. So it's like,
yeah,
who cares?
Yeah. There's just so many people ahead of them that I think I'm kind of with you that I could care less which one it is. Sorry,
yeah.
RIP to both of them.
Have to get guys. Gotta get a new jersey to replace my Semi Ojale one. These last two ones we're gonna do pretty quick. James Clips 2 asks, can the Clippers do any damage in the play-ins if just Powell and PG returned? Yes.
If in Powell the play-in, which would only be one game? Yes.
If Powell and PG return, this team's going to the Western Conference Finals.
I just think it's like, to me, it's like a little bit of a math problem, right? Like, I think at their peak, this team, what we're rolling out right now, could maybe win 2 games in a series. Maybe. Like, a lot of stuff would have to go right.
Yeah.
But they could maybe win 2 games in a series. So I guess the question is like, do you think Norm Powell and Paul George are good enough to win 2 games in a playoff series? Because my answer would be yes.
100%.
Emphatically.
JR in my lifetime asks, what was on the Ballmer burger that Serge Ibaka cooked up? And would you try whatever you think it is? So Ballmer's going to be on the Serge Ibaka cooking show. If I'm going on that show, I'm pretty much eating anything except for that shot of cricket juice. For some reason, I just don't want that. But I'd pretty much eat anything Serge made.
I'd do it.
Yeah. What do we think's on that burger for Ballmer? I don't know. That's a pressure meal to make for a guy worth billions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think? I don't know. Like, do you go super highbrow with the ingredients? Do you do something funky? Like,
I hope he just pulls out a hot dog gun and just starts pelting Ballmer with a bunch of hot dogs. He's like, eat these. Oh, apparently, Andrew Greif, fantastic reporter for the LA Times, pointed out that the Cavs hot dog cannon was hitting the banners in the stadium. It's like how powerful it is.
That's impressive.
That's
an impressive hot dog gun.
Yeah, we gotta get someone from Microsoft to get off whatever project they're working on and make us some more powerful hot dog cannon. Coming up, thank you for the questions, everybody. Heavy hitters again on this Twitter Tuesday. We picked the best questions and put them on every episode. Coming up, we're talking Zoo and Reggie having an elite pick and roll pairing, and then just a dumbass article from Bleacher Report. But first, Will, you and I, we have doubles of cars, we have triples of cars. Where do I get my parts? I just ask people I see if they have the specific parts I need. Where do you get your parts?
I get my parts at Rock Auto. We mentioned them up top, but this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. All right, so look, with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket if you have a phone. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? It doesn't make any sense. Rock Auto is also a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you need: tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So check out rockauto.com for all your auto parts needs. Go to their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
All right, welcome to Shavings. Quick note on the play-in game. As we're recording this, Karl Anthony Towns had 32 points in the third quarter of the Wolves game. So maybe I'm rethinking who I want to play. But anyway, so haggle, no haggle. Zoo and Reggie are an elite pick and roll pairing, Will. Haggle, no haggle.
I mean, I guess no haggle in terms of production, haggle in terms of do we see it enough? Should we see more?
So that's a fair question. So Reggie and Zoo are hitting 1.04 points per chance during the pick and roll. The average in the league is 0.9, which is really good. They're hitting the same points per chance in the pick and roll as Trae Young and Clint Capella.
Is a chance the same as a possession?
Basically, yeah. This particular site used the chance. I don't know why.
Gotcha. Okay.
Duos with a higher points per chance than Zoo and Reggie include Conley and Gobert, John Morant and Steven Adams, DeMar and Vooch, and CP3 and Ayton. Those are the only four that have a higher points per chance. Now, granted, Reg and Zoo haven't run as many pick and rolls. This is with the caveat minimum 100 pick and roll kind of chances throughout the year. So still quasi-substantial.
2 per game? I don't know that that's that substantial.
I mean, these are the only other people who are running more. I think the issue with this is you're right, is it's the amount of it, right? Like the Hawks obviously run infinitely more pick and rolls with Trae Young and Clint Capella than the Clippers do with Reg and Zoo. But I think this has kind of flown under the radar throughout the year. There's not a lot of different outcomes with this pick and roll, right? Like it's really, you pass it to Zoo, Zoo kicks out to a shooter, which I think helps kind of boost these numbers. But it's fun. I feel like we haven't even seen it enough, or maybe it's because we've been blinded by just trying to like deal with these lineups we're having to go with. But shout out Reggie and Zoo for kind of making this part of their game a little bit better than I think it was last year.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's like the incremental improvements we talk about with Zoo every single year. And I think it's tough because especially for me as like someone who watches the team and a fan and someone who covers them, I tend to focus sometimes so much on like the flaws in Zoo's offensive game. Nights when he's not finishing well.
Yeah.
Short hair. Yeah. But so it's really great to see something like this. And the other thing about this that's like really reaffirming is this is such a bright spot in what has been offensively a very rough sort of process and team and just whole thing. So it's good to see that, there is some aspects of this offense that even down two of their best players and one what could be a significant offensive contributor in Norm Powell, that they are still finding ways to score, and even in some instances in an elite way.
That's a great point, is like the supporting cast around Zoo and Reggie is a lot different than the other guys we talked about on this list. So let's hope they can keep it going. Shout out Zoo, shout out Reggie. Okay, finally, we have to talk about this Bleacher Report article that Tomer brought to Clipper Nation's attention. We have to talk about it because it's so egregious. There's a bunch of these trash articles written every day. This one is super egregious. I don't know who wrote it. I didn't even click on the article because I didn't want to give them those 2 pennies of ad revenue or whatever. So the trade idea is this. The Clippers trade Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, and Norm Powell for John Wall.
I'm not seeing it.
It's fucking insane. He hasn't played in a year.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
What on earth would this do? They said that Wall's old school table setter play style would raise the Clippers ceiling. As if this is the real point guard dog whistle. Old school table setter is a real point guard dog whistle. They don't mention the floor of what maybe having John Wall on the team would be.
I was going to say, and like, I don't see it raising. How does it
he makes us a better team?
How does this raise the ceiling more than Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, and Norm Powell?
2 starters, maybe 3 starters for like John Wall.
Yeah, like on what universe is that raising the ceiling?
They also added that we might have to add a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, right.
I don't think they know what John Wall's contract is. I think John Wall
was this written by the Houston Rockets front office?
Yeah, this was written by their GM. Well, he's broke, so he's getting all those loans, so he needs that second income.
The owner, Fachita?
Yeah, yeah. Like, do they think he's still playing and like average? And like, I don't mean this is a slight towards Bleacher Report. John Wall, if he got bought out, come to the Clippers. It'd be a really fun time if he got bought out. But I'll tell you what, the Clippers front office especially, this is such a irresponsible article from an NBA journalist. To think that the Clippers front office would do this is the other part that's crazy to me. I'm not saying they don't do big trades. We all know they do big trades. But this would be the worst trade other than maybe when we gave up that unprotected pick that became Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Like, this is just crazy.
It's bad. It's bad.
They mentioned that John Wall showed a willingness to occasionally defer to Bradley Beal, which feels like a backhanded compliment.
So maybe he can occasionally defer to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Oh, love that.
Yeah. They also said, the article also asked if Houston would even have interest in Norm and Morris.
Why wouldn't you have interest in like plus players? I mean, I guess Morris is old and still has some years on the deal.
But like, I don't know. Bleacher Report's trash. It's all trash. But you know what? The Clippers aren't trash. The Clippers are fantastic. And on Wednesday's episode, we're going to have a preview of Clippers vs. Raptors, which could be an interesting game. We're going to have a What You Say Wednesday poll over on Locked On Clips. So go ahead, answer that when you see it coming out. We'll talk about it on the show. We just ask a question about the Clips and then talk about the voting results. And of course, whatever else happens between now and then in Clipperland, Will, if someone wanted to go on iTunes and give you specifically a 5-star review for the fantastic solo episode that you did yesterday, where could they do
that? So you can view or review us over on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app on your mobile device. We're also on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify, where you can also leave a review. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Stitcher. We're on Deezer. Basically, anywhere you get your podcast, you can check out this podcast. We mentioned it to you up top, but we do come at you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific. Hey, make us your first listen. It's a good time.
Yeah, it is a good time. Even when the Clippers lose, even when they have a horrible schedule, we still bring some fun stuff for you. I have been positive, Chuck Mockler.
And I am William the Opinion Updike. And as always, we appreciate you.